This is the Pipeline Podcast, where you'll get to know the next generation of Columbus Blue Jackets. Let's see who's coming down the pipeline today with your host, Dylan Tyrer.
Welcome to the Pipeline Podcast. Great to have you back with me, and I'm honestly very excited for this week's episode because I'm eager for you to get to know Corson Ceulemans. Of course, he is the subject of this week's show, and I'm so excited because before I did this interview with both Corson and Blue Jackets Director of Player Development, Rick Nash, I really didn't know a whole lot about Corson Ceulemans. What I did know is this. Obviously, the Blue Jackets selected him in the first round, 25th overall at this summer's NHL entry draft. I knew he was a right-shot defenseman, but going into that draft, there was a lot of discrepancy surrounding where Ceulemans was going to go. He's a polarizing prospect. Some scouts had him going higher than where the Blue Jackets selected him at 25th overall. Some scouts had him going lower than that. So I was really eager to get to know Corson's story, to know what he has to do to make it to the National Hockey League, where he excels, where he's looking to improve, and we're going to get all of that today from both he and Rick Nash. A little bit more about Corson before we get started. Like I said, he's a right-shot defenseman, 18 years old, from Beaumont, Alberta. He stands at 6'2", 198 pounds, and he's in the midst of his freshman season at the University of Wisconsin. Off to a great start this season, currently second on the team and first amongst all defensemen with 10 points. He's done it on 2 goals and 8 assists in 15 games. Even more impressive that he's second on the team in scoring, he's missed some time dealing with injury this season. He's played 3 less games than most of the rest of his team, so really, really impressive numbers for a true freshman. Again, 10 points in 15 games this season as a blue liner. But right now, it's time to get right into it. Here he is, Blue Jackets prospect Corson Ceulemans. All right, Corson, let's get started. I'm always interested in asking you guys how you got into the game of hockey, whether it's an older sibling, your mom or dad playing the game, or maybe you just found the game yourself. It's a little bit different, I think, for kids from Canada like you compared to kids from other countries or the United States, where other sports are maybe more popular. But how did you get into the game of hockey?
My dad, he grew up playing hockey, and he played junior and a bit of Ncaa hockey. So, from the time I could walk, I had a mini stick in my hand, and I was dashing stuff around the basement.
Who was your team growing up?
Favorite team was the Oilers growing up.
All right, so an Edmonton Oilers fan. Let me ask you about your early stages of playing hockey. Were you always one of the better players on your team, or when did really the transition happen where, maybe being an NHL prospect was a realistic thing for me?
I think growing up in my town, I was probably always the best player on my team. And then kind of as the draw zone started to get bigger and, the triangle started to get smaller, there's less players, and I was still one of the better players out there. I just kind of realized that, maybe I could go somewhere with this game and I'd have an opportunity to be, an NHL pick, maybe an NHL first round pick, and, live the dream of playing in the NHL. So I think, probably around my midget Bantam years is when I started to realize that.
All right. Well, that's interesting because, I'm always curious with that. Some guys are late bloomers compared to others, but for you, it sounds like, you were always one of the better guys, always was a possibility for you. I want to ask you about some of your skills. You're really known for a booming shot. Where did that come from? Is it a God-given thing, or is it something that you really worked on developing in your youth?
I think it's something I really worked on. I had a net and puck board in my garage and hundreds of pucks, so I just get out there and shoot pucks all day, every day when I was a kid. It was my passion. It was what I like to do, just get out there, shoot pucks, have fun. So I think that's maybe where I got my shot from.
You mentioned you're an Edmonton Oilers fan growing up. Who were some of the guys in the National Hockey League, Oilers or not, that you modeled your game after and kind of tried to emulate? Guys you looked up to?
My favorite player as a kid was a forward. It was actually Ncaa, so I just loved him because I thought he had sick hands. He was so crafty out there. So I tried to, implement a little bit of skill in my game and, a little bit like him. And then I think, watching Erik Karlsson and, guys like him, as I get older, those are guys who I really like to play like. And, they're great defensemen. So hopefully I can be one of them, in the future.
Ales Hemsky, that pick's a little bit off the board there. What drew you to his game? You talk about the skill, but anything else that made you start liking him?
I'm not too sure. I think, maybe that goal against the Dallas Stars might have had something to do with it. But I think I was too young to remember at the time. I just, he was kind of my guy growing up.
You played with the Brooks Bandits in the AJHL prior to becoming a Wisconsin Badger. How did you end up there?
When I was 15 in midget, I took a visit to some of the AJHL programs around the league. I visited Brooks, and it was just a cut above the rest. So the facilities, the coaching staff, how they run their program there was just, first tier. I kind of fell in love with it. And, Pap's obviously a great coach. He has a bunch of great systems, and he's able to develop players, what he did with Ncaa and, guys like Ncaa too. So I just thought it would be a great spot for me to be able to kind of expand my game, both offensively and defensively, and ended up being a great fit.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Ncaa being there. Obviously, a great defenseman, a perennial Norris Trophy candidate now in the National Hockey League. He's so young in his NHL career, but he's already so great. A right shot, offensive-minded defenseman like you. He played in Brooks. Did that have anything to do with you ending up becoming a Bandit?
Yeah, I think that had a lot to do with it. Probably a little bit to do with me choosing the NCAA route as well. Just, seeing how he's able to develop and go through Brooks and go through college, and the player he is in the NHL now, just really appealed to me. So, he's a great leader that way, and he's able to pave the way for future comers like me and other guys too.
Well, you led me right into my next question there. I was going to ask you why you went the NCAA route, because I talked to Kent Johnson about the exact same thing. You're both Western Canada guys who are going to Big Ten schools. He kind of talked about some of the guys who had done it before him playing college hockey, players like Johnny Gaudreau that he looked up to playing in college, other guys like that. So you mentioned Cale Makar there. Is that really the prime reason, or were there some other factors that play into that choice?
Growing up, my parents just wanted to educate me on both options, WHL and NCAA. My mom's a teacher, so she was really big on the school side of things. So I went down, I visited a few schools, and, I came to Wisconsin, and I kind of fell in love with it here too. I just thought this was like an NHL, type place, and just with the people and the facilities and everything they have here. And, so many great players have started to come out of the NCAA. I just figured it would be a great time to, utilize that route and come to Wisconsin. Obviously a great program. So I was happy with my choice.
You mentioned the education factoring in on all of this. Have you picked a major yet?
No, I'm still undecided.
All right. You have anything in mind that you're thinking about?
Nothing yet. Just kind of taking classes to, see what I'm interested in so far.
All right. Fair enough there. I want to talk to you about being drafted by the Blue Jackets, 25th overall pick this summer. You were a highly touted defenseman coming into this draft. Did you have any idea the Blue Jackets were interested or potentially going to draft you?
I talked to them a few times, but, coming on the day of the draft, I wasn't too sure I'd be going home in a Blue Jackets uniform, but a couple minutes before I got picked, I got a Twitter follow from the Blue Jackets. So that was pretty cool. Just kind of know I nudged my sister and told her to go record the moment. So it was pretty cool.
What were the emotions in that exact moment? I mean, it's got to be cool going anywhere in the National Hockey League, but it actually happens. What were the feelings there?
Yeah, just kind of everything you've been dreaming of as a kid just kind of comes to realization. I don't really know how you can put it into words. Just so much joy, so much happiness. Everybody around me, my parents and all my friends and family that were there, they were just so happy. They know how much work I put into it, and how much I wanted it. So it was just awesome to see how happy they were for me, and how awesome it was to get drafted too.
Do you know anything about the Blue Jackets or Columbus before you got picked by the CBJ, or no?
No, I had hardly any information there.
Do you know a little bit more now?
Yeah, I've been learning, looking at Ohio. It's a pretty cool place. Actually, a lot of pro sports teams there, Ohio State's, the school's right there too. I heard it's a pretty good football school, so that'll be fun to go watch games there when they battle Wisconsin.
You're making the transition to the college game from playing junior prior to this. You're 13 games into your NCAA career. What's this transition been like for you?
It's definitely been a change of pace. The guys are a lot bigger, stronger, faster here. They get on you quicker. You have a lot less time and space with the puck, but I think I've started to figure it out. I'm able to create a lot of time and space for myself out there and make plays. Our team's got to work on scoring goals a little bit more, but I think, once we do that, it'll improve our record a lot. But, I've liked the transition I've made so far. I think I've made it pretty nicely.
What are your impressions of the college game? You mentioned there it's a little bit older of a crowd. You play against, I guess, a little bit more physically mature of players. That's what you hear about guys that take that college route, that you get ready for the man's game a little bit more. Is that something that's really impressed you so far?
Yeah, definitely. Everybody's just super structured as well. A lot of teams are, super sound defensively. I think it's more of a defensive-minded type league. It's definitely been a change coming from the AJHL where, in Brooks we were beating teams, 8-1 every game. So it's been a good adjustment so far. I like the change in style, and I think it's just going to make me a better player.
So you get drafted by the Blue Jackets this summer prior to starting your freshman year at Wisconsin. What's the communication like between the Blue Jackets and yourself leading up to that?
I've been talking to Rick Nash a little bit. He's just kind of telling me to, do my thing, feel comfortable, feel confident out there. I'm not sure how long I'll be here, but hopefully, I can be in Columbus as fast as possible. But he just said, take it day by day, work on everything you can to improve your game and, see what happens.
What are some of those things that you want to work on? I mean, that you already are working on, obviously now, but through the rest of this season and then, hopefully as you progress towards making the Blue Jackets roster, what are some of those things you're working on in your game?
I think just becoming more of a complete defenseman in the defensive zone, being able to use my body position more to just, deflect players to the outside and shut down their time and space. I think that's going to be a huge thing at the NHL level. I think, so far at the Ncaa level, I've started to get a little bit of hang of it. Just always having a good stick is, always important, super crucial in the NHL too. So, those are two things that I'm really going to work on this year.
What's that like for a Canadian kid being able to talk with Rick Nash? I mean, that's pretty unique that you get to talk to a guy like that. He's kind of in charge of your development with this organization. How cool is that for a Canadian kid like you?
Yeah, it's awesome. He's been through the whole process. You know how it works. He was a great player, first round pick too. So, he understands everything that we're feeling, everything that we're going through. So it's just awesome to have him in our corner.
For Blue Jackets fans that might not know a lot about you, can you describe what type of player you are and what type of player you want to be in the NHL?
Yeah, I think I'm a solid two-way defenseman. I like to bring some offensive flair and create plays. I'm able to make good first breakout passes and join the rush. I'm also able to, use my physicality out there to be able to shut opponents down.
You ever talk to the other guys that you were drafted by the Blue Jackets with in the first round this summer? Kent Johnson, obviously playing in the Big Ten too. Cole Sillinger is with the Blue Jackets right now, having a great start to his NHL career. I know you guys played a little bit together this summer. Has the communication continued at all between you three?
Yeah, I talked to Kent a little bit. We played Michigan once, and we're going to play him again coming up here. So we just get into it, have a little conversation before we play those teams. But, I haven't really talked to Sil. He's doing great in the NHL so far. So super happy for him.
Now that you're, I guess, going to be future teammates with those two, do you pay a little bit more attention to what they're doing?
Yeah, for sure. I've started to, watch Sil's shifts in the NHL, and, Johnny's all over Twitter and everything with all his highlight reel goals and stuff. So it's pretty cool to see about those guys.
What about the rest of the Blue Jackets? Have you been paying attention to what they're doing this season?
Yeah, they're having a good year. They're off to a good start. Hopefully they can keep it going and make playoffs.
What about the guys in that Blue Jackets decor? It's a really young decor. You've got Adam Boquist, who's a great, offensive defenseman in his own right, still very young in his NHL career. I mean, a lot of guys are young in their NHL career in the Blue Jackets decor. Jake Bean, who's really getting, full-time minutes now with the Blue Jackets. Zach Warensky. Do you look at those guys and say, yeah, I'm looking forward to being a part of that group and, maybe taking something away from them already?
Yeah, they're great defensemen. All super high draft picks, all great NHL players so far. And, I'm sure they're going to be as they keep going through their career. So, watching Zach Warensky, just how calm he is with the puck, how smart decision he makes. He's never really panicking. He's always under control. And, he knows what he's going to do with the puck before he gets it. And, he's got a howitzer shot too. So, he's a great defenseman to watch.
You mentioned you want to make it to the Blue Jackets as quickly as possible. What does the future look like for Corson Ceulemans? I know you've got to finish out this season at Wisconsin, and I'm not asking you to say where you're going to be next year or after that, but what are some of the goals that you have for yourself going forward?
I'd obviously like to play on the Wood Juniors team. Next year, that's it's always been a goal of mine since I was a kid. So definitely like to accomplish that. And then, hopefully that sets me up well for everything else moving forward.
All right, Corson. Well, that's all I got for you. I really appreciate the time. Good luck going forward this season at Wisconsin, and hopefully we'll be talking to you in Columbus sometime soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
So I'd like to extend a great big thank you to Corson Ceulemans for joining me this week on the Pipeline Podcast. Very first time that I had ever talked to Corson Ceulemans, so good to get to know him on a little bit more of a personal level. Good to learn about him as a player, what he wants to work on as he hopes to make the Blue Jackets someday. So again, great big thank you to Corson. But I'm also interested in learning about what the organization thinks about its prospects. And when it comes to the Blue Jackets, there's nobody better to ask than Rick Nash, especially because on top of being the Blue Jackets' Director of Player Development, he's the guy directly in charge of Corson Ceulemans' development. So here he is to talk about Corson Ceulemans, Rick Nash. I want to learn about Corson Ceulemans because I really don't know a whole lot about him, and I feel like when you read scouting reports about Corson Ceulemans, it's kind of all over the place. You don't really know a whole lot about him. So when the Blue Jackets drafted him 25th overall this summer, what type of player did this team think they were getting?
Yeah, so we were with Corson Ceulemans when we drafted him. I don't think a lot of us in the hockey ops knew as much about him as our scouts did, which is obviously the case, and we've talked about this before, that these scouts watch him so much more than we have. But getting to know Corson, I truly believe that we have a complete defensive player. He brings it offensively. He's solid in his D zone. So when I think of Corson, what his potential is and what his ceiling is, it's obviously on the lines of a complete defenseman that I think every organization needs to have as the backbone of their team.
Does he have a lot of room to grow? Because that's another thing where, you read some of these reports and I can't quite figure it out. If, I think maybe consistency is the thing that people want to see more in his game, but how much do you think he really has to do, or how much does he have to grow till he's ready for this type of game?
Yeah, so Corson has a lot of work to do to become a defenseman in the NHL, which obviously it seems like it's a harder league to crack for defensemen than it is for forwards. I think Corson made a great decision in going to the University of Wisconsin, working there with Tony Granato as he handles the program there, and we've been in touch with him a lot to develop Corson into an NHL player. Now it's mainly going to be up to him if he can take the jumps and have his defensive game mature. When you talk about consistency, I could definitely see that being one of his knocks. Some nights he's the best player on the ice, and other nights it seems like he tries to do a bit too much. When Corson has success, he plays with confidence and he plays with a little bit of swag, and that's when I think as Blue Jackets and as a development coach, that's when I get excited.
What are the bright spots of Corson Ceulemans' game? Where does he excel?
Yeah, so I will say that the thing that's impressed me mostly with Corson so far is his offensive game. I mean, when he gets up the ice, he gets up the ice in a hurry. He's got great hands. He's playing first unit PP for the Badgers. His skill is really good. His decision making is good. Where I want to see Corson improve a bit is in his own zone. And when I talk to his coach and rely on him and his feedback, he believes that it'll come in the next year or so. So I think we got to be patient with Corson. I think the ceiling is really good on him, but it's hard to be a primetime defenseman in the NHL.
Is it just a matter of a little bit more experience, more seasoning against more physically developed guys? That's what everybody says about college. You play the college game, you're going to play older players, a little bit more mature physically. Is it just a matter of that and then kind of reaching that himself, more time in the weight room, getting a little bit stronger?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's a matter of playing against 21, 22-year-olds and developing and becoming stronger and kind of growing into his body. I think a lot of us forget that with this COVID season, the year past, a lot of these kids didn't play many games, so they didn't have like a regular schedule or a regular workout routine. But now that he's at university and he's in the weight room quite a bit, and he can put on some weight, he's already a bigger guy. But I think once he feels more confident in his body and more sturdy, I think he's going to be a good player, but there's still some work to do for him.
You mentioned that COVID season, and I think Corson Ceulemans is, a real embodiment of that, because I feel like a player like him, based off of, my conversations with him, things that I've read, people talking about Corson Ceulemans going into the draft, after the draft, that had he been able to play that season or play more games that season, that he's the type of player that really could have rocketed up a draft board. Do you know what I mean there?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was talking to a few scouts that work for a few different companies around the NHL, and the one guy was saying that he had him higher on his list than we got him, and the other guy said he had him lower. So it was very interesting, and that's what they brought it back to was the COVID year, not knowing what it'll pan out to be. So far, all my live viewings, I've seen things that I've loved from Corson, and I've seen things that he needs to work on a little bit. And that's our job, is to, as Blue Jacket development department, is try to help him and try to make him feel comfortable on the ice. And sometimes that takes time, but I think he's got a great ceiling on him.
What about that shot? I've heard that's a huge asset of his.
Yeah, well, to step into Wisconsin in your first year and be almost pretty much the quarterback of the power play is very impressive. He's got a great one-time shot, and then something that's impressed me too is when he's walking the blue line, even 5-on-5 or on the power play, he finds the holes to get those little snapshots through, and that's a talent. A lot of D-man can just bury it into another player's shin pads without getting their head up, but he can walk the blue line great and find those lanes. I'm not really concerned about any of his offensive abilities. I think we have to make sure Corson, fills into that body and gets ready defensively.
You talk about walking the blue line, and that makes me think of so many young defensemen in today's game. The Cale Makars, the Adam Foxes. I feel like it's in vogue right now to be a young right shot defenseman that's creating all sorts of offense. Those guys are two of the best defensemen in the NHL already. I don't necessarily want you to compare Corson to those guys, even though, he did follow Cale Makar to the Brooks Bandits and then to play NCAA hockey. I talked with Corson a little bit about that, and he said that Cale Makar is a big influence for him, and he likes watching him, and it's kind of the reason that, he went to Brooks and ended up going the college route. But is there somebody in the pros or a type of game or maybe something that you've seen in the past that reminds you of Corson, or Corson reminds you of them?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, you think about 10, 15 years ago, and you think about the D-man that were winning the Norris Trophy, the bigger guys that were stay-at-home and kind of straight-line players. But now with the evolution of the game and how we evolve as a hockey player, that D-man has to be able to move. He's got to be able to walk the blue line. He's got to be able to make plays. He's got to be able to, beat the forecheck. So when I think of Corson, I think he has all those abilities to do that. When I think of a player, funny enough, it's just our fans know him pretty well, and I'm not going to put Corson on this stage yet, but I see a lot of Seth Jones in him. He's got great offensive ability. I would love to see him get to where Seth is defensively. Seth's a tough guy to play against. And I think he can leapfrog Seth on the offensive side. I think Corson has the skill and the ability to do that. But if our fans haven't seen Corson yet, and they kind of want to get some sort of image in his head, and I say this very carefully, don't hold me to this, but he's somewhere along the lines of looking like a Seth Jones.
Well, I'm sure that excites Blue Jackets fans, and it excites me. It's great to hear, and I'm really eager to see what Corson does throughout the rest of this season, and what he does until he eventually is a Blue Jacket. And right now he's about halfway through his first season at the University of Wisconsin. You've talked about the conversations that you've had with him and the coaching staff already about his game. As this season goes on, where do you want to see him go? What are the next steps for Corson Ceulemans this year?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of interesting because this is kind of my first year of doing development. So these are the questions that you are asking me is the questions that I'm asking, whether it's Jarmo or Chris Clark or Tony Granato at Wisconsin. So I'm kind of learning as we go here and taking a lot of support and a lot of help from my peers. As I watch Corson's game grow, I would like to see him be a little harder on the defensive side of the puck. I would love when he's playing with confidence. As the season goes on, I think his game gets better and better. And I think the important thing for him is he has to realize that he has to put on some weight, put on some muscle, make sure his body's in shape, because when you get to this NHL level, the pace is so much faster and the guys are so much stronger.
All right, Rick, that's all I got for you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dylan.
So I always love talking with Rick Nash. He's got a lot of great insight, obviously, there into the Blue Jackets prospects, but great to talk to him about Corson. He knows a lot about the prospect, and how about that endorsement at the end comparing him to Seth Jones? Obviously not there yet, but the toolkit is there for Corson Ceulemans, so certainly a lot for Blue Jackets fans to be excited about. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Pipeline Podcast. I'd like to remind you that if you're interested in seeing Corson Ceulemans play in person, remember, he's playing for Wisconsin in the Big Ten Conference. That means they have to come to Ohio State eventually this season. That'll happen at the start of February 4th and 5th, Friday-Saturday series at the Shot right here in Columbus. You can head out to see Corson Ceulemans for those two games. I'll certainly try to make it out to at least one of those games if my schedule will allow me. So hopefully I'll get to meet some of you guys and see you there. But that'll do it for this week's edition of the Pipeline Podcast. Thanks again to Corson Ceulemans and Rick Nash, and I will talk to you next time.